Hello there! I'm Terry Duke, and welcome to my channel. WARBAND is unarguably the game I've played the most throughout my life, and that's mainly thanks to a huge community of modders that keep finding ways to push the boundaries of the game ever further. At this point I've made 2 videos showcasing my favorite mods, some I had played before, others recommended to me in the comments. And after getting several more suggestions, here we are again for part 3. Once again, I'm ranking the mods based on my own personal preferences, so let's go! For starters, this one was a mixed bag. Meet Explorer. Rather recent, Explorer takes us back to Calradia, but with a very different approach. Instead of having a world map, Explorer has us play in a more traditional, open-world RPG style. We no longer have a world map to travel onto. Going from town to town now requires you to actually travel the land, where you'll come across villagers and bandits alike. We have a world map that tells us where we are, but the only way to find locations is to actually scout them, or ask people passing by to give you info. Even in towns, there is no menu to access the market or the arena. You have to manually find them in the streets. While this may seem rather tedious to get around, the mod somewhat makes up for it with an interesting feature, that of the Raven. When pressing Y, we will take control of a Raven flying real fast that allows us to quickly survey the area. The Raven can also be used to quickly move across different regions. And that's pretty much it. The mod feels very experimental, so it's a very interesting mod if you wish to give WARBAND Native a makeover. That said, I do feel it needs to be polished more. As a simple traveler, it took me a full hour of gameplay to get from the Saranid Desert to the Kyrgyz-Swadian border. That said, it makes for an interesting adventure. Because there is no longer a one map to interact with bandits, they will just spawn at random whenever you reach a new area and attack with full surprise. And looting is quite ridiculous. Instead of getting a full menu after the battle, dead NPCs will have chests in front of them, and destroying them gets you the loot. It's also a lot harder than it has right to be. Come on. Come on! Okay, let's just shoot an arrow. Oh, you gotta be kidding me. Seriously? On a different note, the scenery is quite nice. Calradia never looked so good. According to the mod page, the Explorer approach results in sieges and battles being more intense, but I didn't go that far. This mod is daring, but for me personally, not my cup of tea. Up next, going to one of my favorite time periods, the Napoleonic Wars, with L'Aigle. L'Aigle takes us to Europe in 1809, where my man Napoleon rules France at the peak of its power. So of course, amazing scenery, very good gun gameplay, and painfully realistic reloading animations. What I like most about this mod is that by enlisting in a kingdom's army, you essentially become a general free to command your own army, which besides paying the hiring cost yourself, you don't actually pay the soldiers' wages, the kingdom does, so once hired, you don't have to worry too much about weekly payments. I really love the uniforms of the Grande Armée. The soldiers look so good. And so does Napoleon, they really nailed his appearance. However, the mod's biggest weakness is what should be its greatest asset, the battles. Forming up a line of infantry and seeing the line of smoke after they fire is pretty awesome. Having cannons is pretty good too, right up there with Between Empires. That said, there's a couple of problems. For starters, most standard muskets are wildly inaccurate. Soldiers can't move and reload at the same time, and the enemy AI doesn't use any formations, he just charges. Adding all this up, the battles are weird. You can never line up too far from the enemy, because the inaccurate muskets won't do jack. If you order your men to charge, they'll stop moving as soon as they have to reload, so they'll barely move forward, unless of course you tell them to not fire. This makes the battles take way too long. Even in a siege, the scenery is awesome, but NPCs struggle to find the proper path. Here I tried to line up my troops past the main enemy trench. That was just a big mess. Visually, L'Aigle is an awesome mod, but the gameplay feels a bit clunky to say the least. Still recommend, but manage your expectations. Up for a crusade? Meet In the Name of Jerusalem. Of course, with a game about knights and swords, you're gonna have tons of mods featuring the Crusades, but In the Name of Jerusalem strikes me as the most intense. In this mod, we're taken to 1187 in the Holy Land, right as Salah ad-Din is about to retake Jerusalem from the Crusaders, leading to the historical Third Crusade. There is a strong focus on historical accuracy, as every lord is a historical character, so of course I fanboyed on my man Salah ad-Din and joined the Saracens. In terms of actual changes to the gameplay though, there's a few, but it's subtle. What I like most is that troops are far more likely to rout in this mod. Even alone against bandits, killing half of them will make the rest run away. Definitely adds more to the realism. Sieges are also different, with not just new sceneries, but new animations, such as a battering ram, and a ballista, though the controls are terrible at best. However, recruiting troops is confusing. I think you're supposed to be made a lord before you can actually recruit from villages, so I got stuck just hiring very expensive mercs from town, which isn't ideal. But all in all, if you want the most immersive crusade experience, In the Name of Jerusalem is for you. And in a similar thematic, if you're looking for the most immersive Middle Ages mod, here's 1257 AD. As far as Middle Ages mod go, there isn't a lot to complain about here. In 1257 AD, the map stretches from North Africa to Scandinavia, and the coast of France to Moscow and beyond. The mod also allows you to start off as a ruler, so I became a sultan. The immersion is excellent, from new sceneries to historical weapons and armors. But also, battles are hardcore. With hundreds of troops in each parties, they make for some of the largest battles I've fought. However, in terms of innovation, there isn't a whole lot. This became painfully evident in sieges. They're about the same as natives, so if you enjoy both sides fighting over a single choke point till one side is all gone, expect a lot more of that and then some. Because armies and garrisons are so large, this makes sieges painfully long. At least there's a respawn feature similar to diplomacy from my previous video. So if you like the Crusades, but more broadly the Middle Ages, 1257 AD is basically In the Name of Jerusalem, only much bigger. But enough about historical mods, let's head into fantasy mods, with Fantasy in Calradia. If you're looking for a mod that brings magic, but don't want to stray too far from native, Fantasy in Calradia is just that. It brings fantasy to Calradia thanks to new factions such as orcs, elves, and the undead. Besides those new factions and the new units and weapons that come with them, the main feature of the mod is the ability to use spells. Heading into magician guilds in key towns, we can buy magic spells and books which can then be deployed in battle, such as a magical sword and fireballs. And of course, many troops are also spellcasters, so it makes for visually entertaining battles. And that's pretty much it really. This is a fun mod to try out if you're new to fantasy mods. Up next though, for the hardcore fantasy lovers, Paradigm Worlds. If I could sum up this mod in 2 words, it would be existential dread. If you thought Warsaw Conquest was doing fantasy hardcore, boy have you seen nothing yet. According to the text during character creation, Paradigm World is set in the year 5000. Or is it 6000? You can actually choose between different time periods. But it's set on Earth, but in a post-apocalyptic future resulting from biowarfare started by Vladimir Putin. It's also, based on the mod page, meant to be an artistic experiment. So, going into the mod, the amount of diversity in the species and weapons and armors meant I was almost immediately completely overwhelmed. I mean, just what the hell is going on? I have a plasma gun, a medieval helmet, and whatever that is for a horse. I'm getting attacked by a skeleton wearing a bulletproof vest. Wait, is that a snowmobile? Yes, it is! and it totally behaves like a horse. Why? Okay, this village is under attack by vampire-cursed maidens. Can't be that bad. Holy sh**! Why are they so fast? And what's with the music? Why is there a dial sound effect in the music? Feeling overwhelmed yet? This was all in the first hour of playing this mod, and quite frankly that was the most I could digest in the moment. To be honest, I really love the concepts in Paradigm Worlds, but I think this is a mod that needs to be approached slowly in small increments before we get the full picture. Given that it was an artistic experiment, one could argue the experiment went really far. If fantasy ain't enough for you, you need chaotic fantasy. Paradigm Worlds is a must-play. And finally, going back to more familiar ground in fantasy, the last days of the Third Age. Besides Prophecy of Pandora, this is also the most recommended mod in my comments. The Last Days takes us to Middle-earth from the Lord of the Rings. Although I'm not a big fan of Lord of the Rings myself, I have to acknowledge a solid mod when I see one, and a solid mod this is. You can either join the forces of good or evil, which gives you access to different species and kingdoms. Although it retains a lot of the freedom WARBAND gives us, it's also very story-driven, as it literally takes the story from the book and movies, with cutscenes to boot. I think The Last Days covers about everything you'd expect from a mod about Lord of the Rings, from all the species, weapons and armors, some epic battles, as well as some amazing scenery. However, it strikes me as a hard mod to play. One of the most distinct features is the currency. Instead of making money, we gain reputation points based on where we are in the world. Each kingdom has its own reputation points, meaning you could do a whole lot for one kingdom and get to recruit their soldiers and buy their gear, but going to another kingdom where they don't know you, you'll have no currency. I think the point is to incentivize the player to stick to the kingdom they begin in, which in itself isn't too bad, but also it's very restrictive. That said, if you like fantasy mods, and especially love Lord of the Rings, look no further than The Last Days of the Third Age. And that about wraps it up. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed the content, I got other mods video on my channel, as well as more coming in the future. If you feel nostalgic, also check out my classic game series for all the amazing games from your childhood that you totally forgot about. Don't forget to like and subscribe, this can go a long way for me. I'll see you next time.